Welcome, everyone. Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I need a motion to approve the agenda for April 11th, 2022.
Angela, thank you.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we have a recognition. So with that, I'm going to turn it over. Who am I turning it over to? Jim Hutchins. I saw him earlier. There he is. And this is a recognition for the STEM Expo Science Fair. Science is near and dear to my heart. Take it away, Jim. Try it again.
Now it's on. Okay.
Yes.
Hi there, I'm Jim Hutchins. I had the great pleasure of being a 7th grade science teacher. On Wednesday, March 23rd and Thursday, March 24th, the middle school held the annual STEM Expo Science Fair in person for the first time in a while. We had 44 projects submitted. They were either done by individual students or teams of 2. For the project, students had to design a science experiment, conduct the experiment, and write up the results. The trifolds were judged by 8 volunteer judges. The awards for first through third place were as follows. And if you're in the room when I call your name, if you can come up here, which I know you were really looking forward to. Here we go. Third place was a tie between the project favorite, was a tie. One of the projects was Favorite Candies of Middle Schoolers by Raylan Childs and Aurora Clements. The other one that took third place was Loki Snyder-Haltz on what is the difference in total dissolved solids between bottled water and different sources of school water. Second place was a tie between 4 projects. Casey Capuzzi's does the type of shoe affect how far a soccer ball travels. Charlotte Dawson and Ariana Good on how long does it take different sodas to boil off their liquid. Chris Lucci on does the color of a solar still affect how well it works. Anna Mata and Josephine Summers on which substance causes the largest reaction when combined with Coke. And first place was an experiment on cat paw dominance by Annie Arvidsson and Sylvia Pawsley. The trifolds for first through third are on the back counter going left to right for anyone to look at later. And I also want to congratulate all the participants for all their hard work. They've been working on this project since October. And I also want to thank all of our judges who had a difficult job. Teresa Carlton, Todd Hilgendorf, Alex Hutchins, Zoe Hutchins, no relation, Paul Kelly, Karen Manning, Taylor Servano, and Jill Snyder.
Okay. Perfect. Okay, ready? 1, 2, 3. I'll do one more. 1, 2, 3. Perfect. Thank you.
And Mr. Hutchins, I would just want to thank you for putting this on. I got a chance to come over and see the wonderful work all these kids did. And I wanted to come up and just congratulate each of them. Wonderful job, guys. Thank you so much.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Thank you, everyone.
Very nice.
That is wonderful, thank you. We encourage you to keep asking questions and to find out the answers. So good job. Now I'd like to take and turn it over. We're going to be doing the rising cost of food prices by the Greenville FFA. They will be presenting a 12-minute skit followed by a brief question and answer. And is there someone who could give a little bit of a background? Ms. Case.
So you're going to see a skit by our Ag Issues team. Our Ag Issues starts out, all of our competitions start at the district level. The top 7 move on. We came in third. We came in third. So from districts, they then move to sub-states. The top 2 move on to sub-states. Our group came in first. Our next step in May is to go to the state convention, and if they place first there, they then move on to the national level, which is Indianapolis, Indiana. So they come up with a topic. It has to be an agricultural topic that's an issue in today's society. So they chose the rising food prices. From there, they have to do the research, they have to come up with statistics, they have to basically create a skit that will teach their audience about their topic. Good? Yes.
Hello, my name is Courtney Tavey, and we are here today proudly representing the Greenville FFA chapter. Today we will be discussing the rise in food prices, causes, and possible solutions. We will be holding a dinner party. I hope this goes well. I really need this to go well. Hosting this dinner party is by far the most stressful thing that I've done while being the New York State Chair of Agriculture. You're here.
Good evening, Ms. Davey. My name is Sawyer Peak, and today I'm representing New York State Ag and Markets. I'm really looking forward to speaking with everyone today.
As am I. Have a seat.
Hello, Ms. David. I'm Hannah Case, and I represent the restaurant industry across the state.
So nice to meet you.
Howdy, Cheryl Katie. I'm Farmer John, representing New York.
Nice to meet you, Don.
Hello, my name is Adrian. I'm with Courtney Tavey, the Chair of Agriculture.
I did what you're looking for. So glad you guys could make the time.
Yeah, it worked out perfectly with them every now and then.
Absolutely. You.
Hello, my name is Eric Heath.
Hi. How's your class tonight?
Well, to be honest, with the rising gas prices, I almost backed out last minute, but I really thought that my voice needed to be heard here for consumers that are and for my community.
I completely agree. Everyone have a seat, please. I would just like to thank all of you for coming. I'm on the committee for global food prices, and I decided to hold this dinner party to gather some thoughts from you on the topic of increasing food prices. As many of you know, food prices have increased by a whopping 3.6% since 2020. This is a huge issue for my committee that we need input from you guys to help solve. Would anyone like to begin?
If I may, I would like to start this evening off with some history.
Absolutely.
In 1926, the New York State Department of Agriculture and Markets was created. Since then, we have been striving year after year to promote agriculture in New York State, and we also provide many programs to help those agriculture producers.
Mr. Peak, I do not mean to interrupt, but have you seen the price of fuel lately? Right now, a gallon of diesel is running $5.30. Back in March of 2021, it was $3.20. That's about a 60% increase in what we pay today for our fuel. I am an independent trucker, and we cannot make ends meet. I have to increase my shipping costs, and with COVID restrictions, we can barely make it work.
You know, that is a great point you bring up, Mr. John. And here at Ag and Markets, we provide many programs, like I said, to support restaurants, farms, and families that may be struggling with the changes brought about by COVID. Some of these programs include the Nurse New York program and the Restaurant Resiliency program. But the gas prices are out of my hands.
Well, if we don't find a way to drop fuel prices, the cost of food is going to skyrocket, and with fewer trucks on the road, we won't be able to meet shipping plans.
Absolutely.
Great, so it's going to become even harder to afford to feed my kids.
The restaurant industry in the past few weeks has seen a drastic decline in takeout and delivery. No one wants to deliver food because of the food. They can't afford the gas. I have to raise my costs to cover my overhead, and that keeps people from going out to dinner as frequently as they used to.
I totally agree. Fuel prices are a really hot topic right now. I'm not sure what fuel prices are going to look like in next week, month, or even year. We are all feeling the effects.
If I may, the cost of restaurant supplies have significantly risen, if I can even get them at all. Packaging prices have increased 72% in the last year. I'm I'm not sure if anyone heard the news recently, but styrofoam was just banned in New York too. This means I now have to use more expensive choice in packaging. However, the new corrugated boxes are better for the environment. They're about double in price.
Speaking of rising costs, grain prices have increased from $13 to $15 a bag. As a result, I am forced to raise the prices of my products. This issue of grain prices has not only affected me, but also has affected many other businesses in the area as well as consumers.
Exactly. All that the consumer knows is that the price of groceries in stores is sitting on Walmart Farm. In January of 2021, I was spending around $600 a month. Fast forward to January of 2022, now I'm spending around $1,000. My family of four has spun out a lot of extras. For example, takeout family dinner is now too expensive. It just seems like farms and stores are just getting rich.
See, this is exactly why I invited you, Mr. Keith. I have a lot of notes already, and it's great to get input from all of you. One argument that my committee is facing is the idea that higher food prices result in more money going back to the farmer. This specific viewpoint makes it very difficult to inform those who are not directly connected to agriculture that farms are in fact not by any means getting rich.
I also agree with that statement, Ms. Tabey. Farmers do not see any of this money from the higher prices. We are lucky to make ends meet at the end of the day. Yet any products associated with petroleum have skyrocketed, such as baling twine, diesel, seed, and fertilizer. By the time we ship our products, we are lucky to make a profit. Forget about making a living.
People are outraged at truckers that think are just lazy and want more money, which is false. Some states, including New York, have imposed reducing emission regulations and can't pick up there because they do not meet the required DOT standards. It's tough out there. Support their families trucking anymore, so a lot of products aren't moving on the road as they used to.
I have heard a lot of restaurants are advertising farm to table. Also, I belong to a farm co-op, which is a great way to invest in the community while getting locally grown food that is safe. I would say that this is something to be factored in.
Agreed, having these discussions and solutions are great to bring back to the committee.
I know fuel prices have gotten everyone's attention. However, my car insurance bill dropped 15% because my car insurance company gave me a rebate because I'm traveling less. Matter of fact, vehicle travel in the U.S. is down 50% compared to years when COVID did not exist.
Also, finding reliable help is a big issue. There are so many businesses that are not operating at full capacity because they don't have the help. Farm help is extremely hard to find, with only 1% of all workers physically working on a farm. When demands are high and supplies are low, costs increase. Things like COVID have really affected the workforce in a negative way.
You know, the recent protests at the border of the United States and Canada have also caused major transportation issues. Trucking companies are short drivers, so the products aren't moving, and prices are steadily climbing while perishables are rotting because they just sit around for too long. And this also means that grains aren't reaching their destinations.
I agree, Mr. Peak. The shortage of truck drivers is also giving consumers a false sense of scarcity. We have enough food, we just can't move it. People start hoarding and the shelves start to look empty.
Food for thought, but seriously. These problems are a growing concern and we need to address them now before they become a global issue.
From my experience, I drive to restaurants, warehouses, and distribution centers all around the United States. I see fewer trucks on the road, less help at pickup and delivery, and everybody is saying the same thing. How am I going to pay for food, gas, and rent?
Soon, menus will be ashamed of their prices. In 2021, the average meal at a restaurant cost $13, and now in 2022, the average cost of food is $20. Restaurants are understaffed, and many are closing their doors. Menu prices increasing are putting the restaurant industry in crisis.
You know, we do provide a restaurant resiliency program, which is made to prevent about $25 million in grant money to struggling restaurants. However, it does say that they only offer meals to distressed or underrepresented New York communities.
That sounds good to those who meet the criteria. What about the ones who are not in underrepresented communities that are struggling?
I'm glad you bring it up, because this program was designed to partner with New York's network of food banks to purchase prepared meals from restaurants and deliver them to the families in need. That means that restaurants that may be struggling to find new consumers can keep up with the rising food prices through this program.
Wow, that sounds like an awesome program. I'll spread that around because I think that could really help the struggling restaurants in New York that I represent.
This is really great feedback, guys. I'm going to recap before we leave. What other concerns would you guys like to have on my list?
I'd like to address the increasing wages.
Absolutely.
Minimum wage in New York is $13.20. We have seen a $2 increase from 2017 to 2022, but food and fuel are rising at a rate that wages don't account for. Smaller businesses with 10 or less employees can't even afford to pay wages and are having to close. The agriculture industry is really suffering from this.
Well, this is definitely an ongoing issue, but I personally believe that businesses should be able to compensate their employees with things other than cash.
Good idea.
For instance, what about paying for food or portions of the harvest? Stewards gives partner 3 half gallons of their dairy products each week. The company gets to write it off, and the employee doesn't have to pay. So this could be a model for I think.
Yeah, definitely, that's a good point.
You know, New York Ag and Markets is trying to look into different policies regarding the hiring process. And we are also trying to encourage more people to find jobs, which will hopefully someday lower these prices.
Personally, I have to raise my shipping rates because of the ever-rising prices at the pump. How about removing some of those taxes? New York taxes alone are running 48 cents a gallon. Suspend the state tax, and that would save you thousands of dollars.
Good point, Mr. Burgon. Getting livestock delivered to and from processing plants has definitely been a problem. Over 2,000 plants have had to shut down because of high cases of COVID, but also because there's a shortage of trucking.
The restaurant industry has been hit hard. Operating costs, wages, supplies, everything is going up. Lack of employees and the cost, it's just hard to stay in the profit margin.
I absolutely know that many other industries that are represented in my committee are experiencing similar issues. We are trying to work out solutions that suit both the consumers and the producers.
You know, one last point that I would like to bring up is climate change. We all know that we cannot control the weather, but there are certain issues pertaining to climate change that have a negative impact on food prices. This country sees some devastating effects from unpredictable weather. It is also affecting the prices.
Mr. Peak, climate change is not just due to agriculture. We should not be the only ones left to fix it. How about we grow more here and increase our exports and encourage more growth in the U.S.?
I know most people worry about food safety. I don't like to buy food that isn't grown in the U.S. Many countries have very loose guidelines on rules for chemical use. We should be rewarded for buying USA products. That's just what I think.
You try to talk
It's
about that.
in the United States.
Well, I always try to buy local first, but it's not always economically possible.
All right, well, dinner's about to be served. I really hate to cut off this discussion, but I just want to thank you all again for coming. I look forward to continuing this conversation during and after dinner. Just to recap tonight's discussion points, because I know there were a lot, some of the major takeaways I gathered were high food prices. They make it harder to move products, make it harder for truckers to make a living, and it's leading to a shortage of truckers. They also make it harder to feed families. But because of this, vehicle insurance has lowered, which almost balances it out. There is a huge rise in costs of supplies. We talked about grain prices increasing restaurant supplies, increase in seed fertilizer, and as a result, consumers are spending a lot more money on food. Ms. Case also touched on the EPA restrictions about the boxes and how that's posing a large issue. We talked about COVID a lot and how it's sort of triggering a lot of this increase in food prices, worker shortages, border restrictions, food hoarding, restaurant restrictions, and processing plant shutdowns are all huge issues that are due to COVID. We touched on climate change briefly. We talked about worker shortages and unpredictable weather, which is having an impact on the increase in food prices. Some solutions that we did discuss, though, that I'm definitely going to bring up to the committee were to suspend the state fuel taxes. That's a great point. Invest more in locally grown products instead of importing more products. Worker incentives, like Mr. Heath brought up. More awareness of government programs, as Mr. Peak was saying, and buying more U.S. products to decrease our amount of imports. I think that was all. Was there anything else that people want me to bring up?
I think that was just about everything.
All right, so let's move to the dinner table. You guys are going to love tonight's dinner. It's all locally grown.
Can't wait.
Thank you, and are there any questions?
I have one. So how did you guys go about doing the research?
Well, I guess I'll start. We basically kind of went through quite a roller coaster coming up with it, but when we did finally come down to deciding to talk about rising food prices, we kind of all just agreed that it was a very hot topic right now, and you know, it was the first thing that we all agreed on, so we figured we'd go with it.
I have to give kudos to Hannah, because I know Hannah sort of carried the team with research-wise. She was amazing and really helped us all sort of come up with the points we needed to talk about, organize exactly what we needed to talk about, and then fit it into a flow that works in the skit. So just finding the statistics, Google is a wonderful thing, finding the statistics and incorporating them so they flow into the speech was a big task, but Hannah sort of tackled that.
Could you tell us what your school you're all in?
We're all from Greenville.
We're all from Greenville.
No, what
What year?
I hope you're. Why are you here?
I'm a junior.
Okay.
I'm in 10th grade.
I'm also a junior.
I'm also a junior.
I'm a senior.
Very good, very good. You guys are incredibly impressive. To have this kind of knowledge and then share it means you've learned a lot.
Yeah, that's sort of the
If
goal.
I could suggest, because what you've talked about is my life. I have done some research about hedge funds. If you know what a hedge fund is? If you research about hedge funds, you're gonna find out that those folks, they're all Wall Street. They're driving costs too. So if you wanna tweak your presentation, that would be I just read a report the other day, the 4 main drivers, and 3 of them you hit, but one of the current ones is hedge funds, and they apparently have found nowhere else to invest their money, but now they're gonna get involved in commodities. And they don't care what you pay for food. They actually want it to go up in price so they can make more money. But all those topics were phenomenal. Labor costs are incredible. And no one wants to work, period.
Yeah.
And fuel costs. Fertilizer is incredible. Thank you. Very good.
Thank you. We love feedback. Just tweaking and learning about what else we can add to make it the most informative we can.
Yeah.
Yeah, just a quick comment, I'm sorry. Great job, you guys threw out a ton of information in a short amount of time. Clearly you put a lot of work into it. So.
That was the goal, just get as much out.
Yeah.
But I'm hungry now.
And good luck.
Thank you. Thank you guys so much.
Before the FFA folks take off, I do want to make sure that we recognize we don't only have some competition accolades, but we've got a couple of students who are representing district level positions. Courtney and Eric, congratulations on president-elects for our districts. Great job. And just a little bit more than that is our man Hunter, who is going to be our vice president of the state. So we're really excited about it. You all make us very proud, and I couldn't be more excited for what you guys are going to bring to the table, and keep up the great work. It's being recognized, and deservedly so. Thank you.
Thank you.
So we have another accolade and recognition, and so it's Jessica Coons, Assistant Director. This past weekend, everyone was working very, very hard and had performances of Once Upon this Island. So I will turn it over to you.
Thank you. Is this on? Now it is?
Yes, it is.
It's been a while. I just want to start out by saying thank you so much for recognizing these students. They've worked very hard since January. This year especially was very special after not performing since 2019. So what they did was incredibly brave, in my opinion, and they rocked it. So I'm incredibly proud of them. So on behalf of Mr. Meredith, myself, and our amazing production team, we want to thank you all for recognizing them. We want to thank the community, Superintendent Bennett. We're very thankful that we were able to do this and bring the community together for 3 nights. So it was wonderful. So if they want to come up and
sing a song.
I told them they should sing or maybe do a little dance.
Somehow I have a hard time believing that they're shy.
No, they're not. So thank you so very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I just want to say, you guys totally nailed it Saturday night. It was a great performance. I give you guys a lot of credit for going up there and doing what you do. It was wonderful. Costumes were great. Performances were outstanding. You make us proud. And again, I think this part of what we do as a school district is something that we really want to make sure that we're educating the whole student. And you guys are
are representative of what we're trying to do. So keep up the great work, keep plugging along. It was outstanding. Great job.
Thank you.
Great work.
Now I'd like to move us on to the open forum. And the 30-minute open forum is the time the board sets aside to hear in-person comments from the public. Comments may also be emailed in advance of the meeting prior to 4 p.m. on the date of the meeting and state in the email if you would like your correspondence read out loud to Daphne Pearson, District Clerk at pearsond@greenvillecsd.org. Is everyone okay? Okay, sorry, I lost my spot. This is an opportunity for residents to voice general concerns or compliments, especially about items on the agenda. However, this is not the time to register complaints about specific individuals or about items that should be addressed confidentially through the proper channels. All comments shall be addressed to the district clerk and shall be limited to no more than 5 minutes per board policy 2180. Please note that members of the board may not be able to directly respond to citizens' concern during the public open forum. Are there any individuals that would like to talk? I see one. And although we know you, if you would please just state your name. Thank you.
Do I actually need to state my name? But I will.
For the record.
So good evening. My name is Kelly Hubicki. I'm the mom of 2 of the boys that were just up here. They were part of Once on This Island this weekend. And I thought maybe I would give you guys a little positive feedback for a change. I wanted to thank you. I want to thank the district administration and the board for the support of the music department, and in particular, their support of the musical. 2 years ago this month, and sorry, I'm going to get a little emotional because it's been a long weekend, right? No, 2 years ago this month, we shut down only weeks before the show opened. The costumes were already fitted, the posters were already printed, and the lines in the songs had already been learned, and then the stage went dark. And unless you've been part of the unique family that develops in a production, you don't understand exactly what that means, what was lost. Like so many other events and programs, our kids were left without their outlet that gives them creativity and energy and support. And then last year, the school had to fight against COVID spread, and the stage remained dark again. And those connections that had been formed in the past fell by the wayside and split even more. I know only a bit of the conversations and the hours that went into the planning and the decisions for this year. Decisions that helped the music department come back with concerts and the musical. There were questions that needed to be answered. How could we keep the kids safe? How would the additional costs be covered when there was such a loss 2 years ago? And was there contingency plans? What did we need to do? The list goes on from there. But the administration at the district level and the school level and the teachers made sure that our kids were a priority. And for that, the words thank you are inadequate. Over the last 3+ months, the positive results of those decisions that you all made have developed. New friendships, renewed self-esteem, and education took place. Abilities were grown, and a small sense of normal came back for the kids, for the parents that were picking up late at night once again, and for the community who sat in those seats this weekend. And the final product on stage was only a very small part of what happened. What this district did for those kids is amazing, and it's big. So I want to thank Mr. Bennett, but also Ms. Sutherland, for the months of work that went into this. Mr. Meredith, Ms. Gorgon, and the entire production team. The 5 adults who gave up 5 days a week on stage and their weekends at home and their families to give our kids back something they needed, to let them shine, and to support them. I know many of you were there this weekend, some, all 3 shows for their daughter, but you saw that, and there was so much more behind the scenes. Thank you for supporting our kids by showing up. Going forward, I know that those kids will continue to shine and will continue to show why and how they are smart and strong. So thank you guys.
Sarah Statham. I work in the school. And I'm here with John Kroc because we would like to propose a club for next year, the Trap Shooting Club. And John's going to speak on it.
So, I come from a family that's where my gun's a big part of my life in recreational shooting. And I know many students in school are just like me, where it's a large part of their life that they go and do the hunter safety course and they learn how to do this safely and stuff like that. And I was just thinking that maybe we could have a school team so we can all, the kids in my grade and other grades, are able to participate in this all together. And so it may seem like this is a small kind of thing where not many schools participate, but it's a very much growing sport, and there are over 100 schools that are already participating in this, 124 to be exact, and some of the schools that are nearby that do this are Berlin High School, Coxsackie Athens, Hudson Falls, Hoosick Falls, Newark High School, and Taconic Hills. So we would be able to have competitions with other teams around in the area. And it's a very safe and growing environment for kids because there's so many rules and regulations set in place to make sure nothing goes wrong and that everyone's able to have a good time and be safe and not get injured in any way. This is also a sport that some kids aren't really able to compete playing sports like soccer, basketball, or baseball would be able to be a part of a team in, where they wouldn't be able to learn teamwork from the other sports because they wouldn't be able to do them. But in this, they would learn the basics of working in a team and helping others and learning how to grow from others' advice and so on and so forth. But to be part of the club, you would have to take an 8-hour-long course at a rod and gun club or online, and it teaches basically teaches the basics of shooting and how recreational shooting and guns work. And all of the guns that would be used will not be like school property; they would be property of the person or their family. And whenever we're at a practice or at a, if say it happens and we have a practice or we go against our team, everyone would have their gun on them at all times. It would never be like left alone somewhere. It would always be with that person. And this sport is not just something that you can do in high school and then you don't do it again. This is something that will help you. You can do all throughout your life, and it will help advance you in hunting and sportsmanship for people that will want to do, say, Olympics later on. This is an Olympic sport, so people will be able to maybe advance to Olympics or even the Youth Olympics if they're good enough as a recent. And it's also statewide, and competitions can be done online. So we can go against schools that are completely far away, but we can solve the scoring from different school districts and get together and stuff like that from far away. That's most of the points I have about it, but you can get scholarships to colleges and maybe a better high school or something along those lines, but it can basically help kids here a lot more to advance their learning of gun safety, sportsmanship, camaraderie, or just teammanship.
I have a question. Can you just describe it as if I've never heard of this before, what it entails?
So, trap shooting or skeet shooting is where a disc made out of clay or some other fragile material is thrown out of a bunker or just a machinery and is thrown in a safe direction where there's no houses, no cars or parking spots, or it's just a safe direction. And the person will have to take a shotgun, either over, under, or pump, and basically follow it and try to break the clay with the bullet.
And where would the competitions take place?
Angela, can you turn your microphone on, please? Thank you.
Where would the competitions take place?
It would take place at a gun club. Right now, it would probably take place at the Norton Hill Rod and Gun Club.
Yeah, we've already talked to the Norton Hill Gun Club, and they would allow us to have it there. And we've talked to some local business owners who are willing to help support us. It's really no cost for the school. The kids have to register. The kids have to own the guns. The kids have to provide their own equipment, safety equipment. It would be practices after school, everything is, kept off of school grounds.
The guns would never go, like, through the parents.
Yeah, they will never
No
go.
interaction with school at all. And obviously, the parent would have to be on board with the child doing it. The sport, it has to be 100% support by them.
Every student is required to take the safety course, and then there's other safety stuff that happens before you begin shooting. Zero.
Oh yeah, there's a zero tolerance. If anyone's fooling around with a gun or doing anything dangerous in any way, they will be immediately kicked off the team. No, I'm sorry. Yeah, just it's it. One strike, you're out.
Could you state your name again and your grade?
Sean Kropp, 9th grade.
Sean, can I ask you some questions about, because I'm seriously interested in this time. Have you ever done sporting clays?
Oh,
A little bit, but he
a
hasn't
little bit,
done
yeah.
professional.
I've never
Okay.
done professional, but I'll do it at my house. and-
There's trap shooting and there's skeet shooting and then there's sporting clay. And sporting clay is just a whole lot of fun. I actually go to a place near Annapolis. I would be willing to work with you on this. I would need the contact for the Coxsackie team so I can find out how they actually function.
So I've also reached out already to Stockbridge Valley, because I know the kids that are on the team there.
Okay.
And they said that we could take kids and go there and watch their practices and how they run theirs, and that if we started, they would come down. I know we have closer coaches too, but the coaches from Stockbridge Valley said they would come down and spend time with us where we would do our practices, and we could go and see how they run theirs as well.
When you do that, if you set that up, Sarah, I'd be willing to go with you, because I'd like to see how it works. And I'd bring my gun too, because.
Well, they did say, they said if you come visit us, you can bring your
I
kids
actually
and
think
their
this,
guns.
this is an excellent approach because, for a lot of people, guns are scary. And I think a lot of it is because there's a lack of general knowledge now. I grew up around them and I grew up in an era when, and in an area, very rural area, where, it was a common thing. And I think there's a lack of education about the safe use of these tools versus what, you hear about on the news that's associated with a gun. So I'd love to work with you on this. And we'll just have to see where it goes. You mentioned that there would be no coach, that we would have to.
No, there,
It would be a coach,
I
but-
would be willing to step up and
Okay.
do that, yeah. I've reached out to people and.
And we have to know what the, I'm
The-
sorry,
when you
I'm sorry I'm
join-
interacting because this is
No,
almost like a presentation
When you join
versus
the New
a,
York State clay shooting thing, you register as a school there, and they cover the insurance for everything.
Right.
And so when the kids register, everything is covered under them,
okay.
insurance purposes.
Oh. Interest, is there student interest?
So I put out a Google survey, and there was 37 positive responses. Of course, that's before kids know probably what it's about, that they have to own their own equipment and stuff. So I'm sure that the number won't be that high. And
Right.
when we first start, it won't be that high because we gotta get our, figure it out and.
Have you seen this online? Have you seen it happen? Are the teams intermixed? Are there,
No. So
there
it's-
boys teams and girls teams?
Oh, no, it's intermixed gender, yes.
Okay, so-
It's not intermixed with other, like, we would do ours at, like, Norton Hill and put the scores in online, and other teams, like, you have your practice weeks, there's a fall season, and the spring season is longer. And you put your scores in online, so you're competing against other schools, but at your own gun club.
Yeah. It's very, very interesting. Thank you for bringing it to us.
So we hope that you'll consider allowing us to do it for the next school year.
Excuse me. I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I don't know if this is working or.
Lights on.
Battery's dead already.
Thank you.
I thank you for bringing this up. I just would state that you have my contact information. It's funny you say this. For the past 2 years through the American Legion, we've been starting something. We call it a junior shooting sports, and this falls into that. So trap shooting and everything else. So what I'd like to do, if you can, at our next meeting, get my information, and I'd like you to present this there as well. We produce, they compete on a state level as well as national level. And it's something we've been trying to get off the ground for our youth. So if this is something that helps, not only with the school, but with safety and everything else, if it's something we can help in that aspect as well, please get my information, perform your presentation. We'll see if we can get something started sooner.
Okay, great.
Thank you very much. Anyone else that would like to speak during open forum?
Hi, my name is Gina Galinas. I almost say Gunderson, oh my goodness. I am here again tonight to voice my disappointment over the handling of the mask mandates in February. I can't help but think that you all received a get-out-of-jail-free card when the governor was forced to lift the unconstitutional mask mandates on March 2nd. This was not lifted because of metrics or low transmission rates, but rather because the governor, attorney general, and New York State Department of Health realized they have no authority to make such mandates, and the stay was vacated on the last possible day, Wednesday, March 2nd. March 2nd. I would have been here March 11th board meeting to state my disappointment. However, I was hopeful that there would be some communication regarding the parent forums that had taken place. In the end, the Board of Education and school administration never showed their support for the parents and students that demanded the mask mandates be lifted prior to the governor's announcement. Those parents and students that were willing to stand up for the constitutional rights and demand change in our school. The Board of Education and school administration never took a stance and instead decided to kick the can until the governor made the obvious announcement to lift the unconstitutional mask mandates. Parent forums were held while waiting for the governor to make an announcement, and it seems to me that those parent forums were just a way to quiet parents and students. The intent of those forums were to generate ideas and create opportunities for unity within our schools and community. Where do we stand on that? Were masks so socially damaging that the mere removal of them has completely healed the culture within our district? In those forums, we were told by the facilitator and presumably paid consultant, Jennifer Bachant, that meeting notes would be distributed and the school would follow up with additional forums and information. Yet nothing has come from those parent forums, leading me to believe that they really were just a way to appease those that were vocal while pretending that the board and administration cared to support us. We were told that your hands were tied and there was $16 million at risk. I had asked very specific financial questions regarding monies received related to COVID and was told that the documents or budgets would be updated to reflect monies received to date and what money was yet to come. I have not heard if this information was actually updated, and I have tried looking on the board and the school's webpage, but to no avail. There is no information to be found. I also still believe it is wrong to only test unvaccinated persons weekly when vaccinated persons are also just as able to get and transmit the virus. How are you allowed to continue this discriminatory practice? And lastly, I would like to know when the school will be open to visitors and volunteers again. This was another area I voiced displeasure of and spoke about with others in the parent forums. Enough is enough. Allow us parents that want to be involved with their children's education and volunteer in the classroom, or simply want to visit their children for lunch. I want the school to be open again for that kind of parent and community involvement. I sincerely hope you all review these concerns and actually do something, rather than pretending to care about the culture between the school and the community. Thank you for your time.
I will say, I've taken note, and we did say that we would provide the information. So shame on us, we need to do that. I will ensure that in a timely fashion, the information that was captured in the focus groups is communicated. I don't know what form it's going to take, but I can say that it was our intention to do so, and it will be done. I think we all share that. The board members participated in the event, in the focus groups, and I think we did that because we do care. It wasn't a facade, it was from the heart. I can say that on a personal level. Regarding the information for the federal funds, when I last looked, it was on the website. If it is no longer there, or if it is in the process of being updated, I will find out where it is. And regarding the opening of schools, I'm going to defer to Superintendent Bennett for that, and he can get back to you unless you want to state something right now.
Yeah, so we've talked about opening up for visitors and our volunteers at our cabinet meetings on Tuesday. I know that all 3 buildings are working on getting the forms back out to make sure that we are able to do that. So be looking for that soon.
Anyone else that would like to speak during open forum? Then I'm going to move us along to the presentations, and the first presentation is a capital project timeline by Matthew Schools from SCI Design Group. And I see him over there, so I do that. Hello.
Now, as Matt and Joanne come up to do the presentation, the work that they've done has been remarkable. We did meet as a district facilities committee end of last week to kind of go over some of the findings and go through some of this information because I know they spent a lot of time working on it. So, Matt, I'll throw it over to you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me in tonight. The point of what I'm presenting tonight is hopefully to bring you all up to date on the progress. Again, it's been a fairly long process to generate the information and go through meetings and prioritization. So we're trying to essentially all in one hopefully quick presentation bring you up to speed with where we're at. So this is the agenda of what we'll go through tonight. We've covered one thing, the introduction. We'll talk about the building condition survey and the process, what that is. The process that we went through to develop the plan that we're talking about tonight, the potential scope that's actually included in a potential capital project, the budget and financial outlook, a potential schedule for a pre-referendum process, which is anything up to leading up to a public vote for a capital project referendum is the pre-referendum portion. And then the post-referendum is the actual project, assuming a positive vote. I'll go through a schedule basically showing what you can expect to see. So first of all, building condition survey is essentially a state mandated report card on your physical facilities, your buildings, your grounds, how things are physically. We'll cover things like the useful life of mechanical systems. We'll cover things like any structural damage or things that need to be on the radar for replacement. Things like roofs and heating systems. They wear out. They essentially are necessary to open school day in and day out. So they're relatively boring things, but we go through the schools and facilities, talk to administration, facilities directors, and staff to establish lists. Like I have an example of our overly complex spreadsheet of logging the information and data, which then gets reported to the to facilities planning at New York State as your obligation to report. So your building condition survey year is 2022. The last one you did was in the 2015 time range. So that's expected now to be every 5 years, and oftentimes the building condition survey process uncovers things that you knew about or you didn't know about that will need to be addressed at some point in the future. So that's the building condition survey. The process we go through, I really want to go through the process because there's, it's an interactive process and there's a lot that goes behind crafting this idea. This is not me, standing after my building inspection saying, this is what you have to do right now, and it's all up to me. It's not up to me. I help to facilitate what we have as a building facilities committee, which many of the people on it are in the room. But we hope to go through the process. We take the BCS information, we gather input from staff, users of the buildings, and curriculum needs, essentially, because a lot of those things I don't know coming in. You guys have to feed that information to me to tell me if you're short on classrooms or if you're, I can tell if a classroom's undersized, but you would indicate what your enrollment needs and your program needs. So what we do is combine all of those things into one document to create a scope. So the next thing is we help you compile the scope listings. Again, an exhaustive list of the needs and the wants and the wish list items that anybody can come up with. We bring it together and we sit down with the administration and the facilities group, and we prioritize those needs. So as we're prioritizing those needs, oftentimes we're assigning probable costs to them. So a lot of those items, they're construction items or other items. They have a value to accomplish them. It costs money, so we'll assign costs to those items. And as the committees and administration continue to meet, we prioritize those things. Hopefully, the big number of facility needs and costs with wish list items and wants in it. Hopefully, we try to drill it down into the real priorities. So the process is relatively drawn-out process that's interactive, and we essentially hope to, at the end, to come up with a scope of work that we feel is necessary and the utmost priority, and a probable budget to execute that scope of work. And that essentially is the road to establishing a capital project. So I think I went through most of this stuff. At the end of the process brings us, the process so far has brought us to tonight, and I'll try and summarize what we have on the table right now. So, potential scope of work. I'm going to start with the elementary school. The elementary school has not necessarily been a focus of previous capital work. There's always something going on, but there's a lot of work that's obviously been done in this building, and there's a lot of grounds and athletics work that's been accomplished. A lot of the elementary school is original or aging, and I'll go through a couple of those things. But one of the major items, or the major item that we've identified, the group has identified for this project, is to do a full renovation of classrooms in that building. And essentially, the only limitation here is the cost. I mean, we'd love to go through and renovate and modernize the entire school. We did a couple of classrooms in the past summer, 2 classrooms exactly, in order to get an idea of the level of quality that we can expect with classroom renovations, and get it served as a nice trial, and it also told us exactly what it costs. I mean, we competitively bid the renovation of the 2 classrooms, and we then have the advantage of using that cost as our probable cost moving forward with additional renovations if you choose to do so. So a major piece of the elementary school is that. Another large piece is
Can I ask a quick question? How many classrooms do we have at Alice that need to be renovated? I mean, we did 2, so do we know? I'm looking for Pete.
There's
How many? 22, thank you.
And I think there's, right. So 34
I'm
plus
sorry,
or
can you
minus.
step up to the mic? I'm like, I can't hear. The 22, you're proposing it in 2 phases.
So
Yeah,
there's
we
22
can-
in the original part of the building, in the front wing, and then 12 in the back part of the building.
So would the 22 and the 12 be done at the same time? Is that the thinking, or that's 2 phases?
I'll explain that in a minute when I show you the plan on the next slide. Essentially, what we want to essentially do is get as many classrooms done as is reasonable based on the cost. So right now, going all the way to the 34 classrooms was looking cost prohibitive. So and since classrooms are a unit and that's a scalable thing, the thought is that as we design the project, we can design for the entire school worth of classrooms being renovated. But when we are preparing a referendum to put before the voters, we don't want to overpromise based on what we believe we can afford. We want to have a reasonable amount. So in this case, in the sort of the complex array of all the needs, we've gotten roughly 2/3 of the classrooms accounted for in the current scope we're looking at. The other 1/3 of the classrooms, we'd really love to also accomplish that work. They're in a wing of the building that is slightly newer, but I'll be clear, everything's old. Everything's beyond its sort of useful life, so we'd like to touch more than we're proposing, and that's the plan. Again, we can't overpromise when we go to a referendum. We want to remain cautiously optimistic moving forward, but I'll explain a little bit of the dynamic of that.
Whoa, that's a hot one. Can I interject before you continue?
Absolutely.
I sat on the committee, and some of the background to this, so all the board members can hear, is that when they first generated the list of stuff that needed to be addressed, some of them were, well, must do, some of them were we should do's, and some of them were we'd like to do. And as we looked at the number, it was way too big. It was huge, humongous, like the government debt. So in reviewing what was capable, it was recommended that they shorten their list down and just present what is necessary, meaning what we can afford. So this list was much bigger. We were extremely concerned about the affordability of this, and all those who contributed said, what can we do and what can't we do, and then fit it in the box. So there are many classrooms that need to be done. This is what fits in the box today. Does that help?
Thank you.
So thank you. That reminded me, you folks do have a paper copy of what I'm eventually going to get through here. That is the written proposed scope of things that have been prioritized down to the absolute most important. One of the things that you'll notice if you look closely is there's a whole bunch of lines that have have been deleted. If you looked at the biggest number at the bottom of the page, that's an idea of the number. There's $33 million worth of potential needs that we considered, and that was after prioritizing some things out at the highest level. So as we move forward, that gives you a little bit of an idea of the scale of the hard decisions that had to be made to get to the level to present it to you folks tonight. But I'll go quickly because you guys can read. But there's a proposed classroom addition for pre-K that was proposed by the school district as an idea to offset what I believe is lease space in a different building right now. So with the support and getting aid for spaces like that, an addition would be possible. Heating system boilers. So the heat generating boilers in actually both schools are aging. The elementary school boilers are older out of the two buildings, and we believe the boilers in this building can last into a future project. So the elementary school boilers are identified. Roof restoration, so you'll see roof restoration in both buildings. This in the elementary school, it's a small section. You've already done work similar to what is being proposed in this project. This is just taking care of the rest of the roofs that have not been restored, the flat roofs on each building. There's ventilation upgrades, plumbing upgrades, electrical upgrades, things like you know, a kitchen grease trap and old wiring. These things just exist in older buildings, so there's things like that that have been identified with our building condition survey that really are priorities if you're renovating a building. I've also included some alternate scope, so you know, the actual value of this project is for the board to decide ultimately. So there, you'll see on your list and up here, there are a couple of things that were priorities, but not the highest priorities that have been identified and assigned a value here. So as I move forward here, these are plans and really you don't have to read into them too deeply, but the plans on the screen now, the blue indicates the classrooms that we would hope to touch with renovations. The peach orange color is actually, there's two locations for potential, that we feel potential pre-kindergarten wing or area could be located. There's a lot of work yet to be done if you decide that you want to include additional pre-K classrooms. The green simply is your boiler room, so that's indicating that there's boiler work, and I can get you a copy of this, but there's the roofs are already also indicated with some lines there. You probably have to squint to actually see it, but this gives you an idea of the elementary school where you know, we really wanted to focus on this school because it had the higher needs. So you can tell from the plans that we're really trying to touch as much as we can do in a project. These are a couple of pictures. On the upper right is just a regular classroom. Many of them are the same. Some with wood floors, some with floors that are vinyl tile that have hazardous materials in them. Tired old ceilings, inefficient lighting, things like that. If you've had a chance to look at the renovated classrooms, it's nothing glamorous, but it's a modernization. So some of the layers of unused items like glass chalkboards and things like that don't have to be hidden behind the interactive displays that you teach on today. The rest are, there's some masonry pictures there. This is above the roof. There's stone copings and brickwork that just needs constant maintenance. You know, the water gets into the into the bricks or things break down, this is something that you'll probably see in every capital project you do for the rest of time, just because you have masonry buildings. And the last fun picture is boilers. There's always got to be a picture of boilers. So the in this school, the middle high school, there's much less scope, but what we do hope to accomplish is an art suite expansion. Both the middle and high school art rooms are side by side across the way. They're identified as undersized, so our thought right now is an addition off the back of the building would allow enough space that all the existing space be renovated and the sizes be equaled or modified, so both middle school and high school get larger art rooms that can accommodate the needs of art today. Again, I mentioned roof restoration. There's some ventilation balancing upgrades for your mechanical systems in the metal shop to work correctly. It's a relatively simple fix. It needs to be done so things can be controlled correctly and things are energy efficient. There's a little bit of all work in old buildings includes asbestos abatement, but I've listed asbestos abatement here because there's some flooring in the building that we recommend be replaced that has hazardous materials. And again, like the elementary school, exterior masonry restoration continues to be a need. It's a little less of a need in this building, and the funding reflects that, but nevertheless in the project still as it stands. Again, with this building, there's alternate scope. These are the items that were, again, that next priority, but really wanted to be in the project, and they're the air handling units in the cafeteria and auditorium. They're aging. Rich can tell you that how they are to maintain, but as mechanical items get old, they get hard to actually maintain. You start not being able to get the parts. These are on the cusp of being that for this school building. So this is a plan. In this case, the green is the mechanical work, and again, blue is the renovation work, and then at the top of the page is the art expansion. And before anybody reacts to the exact location of that, no design has taken place. This is a concept for, we'd really like to have an adjacent addition that's where those blue art rooms exist right now, that allows us to create the correct spaces for those buildings. And there are options, and this is one of them. Again, the upper right and the large photo, that's the back of the building where the two art rooms exist on that exterior photo. And then what I believe is the middle school art room is the photo below it, which appears to have been a science room originally. There's a photo of rubber roofs that would be restored like your other ones, and some of the aging flooring that would be taken care of. On to the fun stuff. So a bunch of numbers here, but what I want the takeaway to be on the cost is where the money's going. So elementary school is $9.7 million in base project scope. And I'll preface the discussion of costs with these costs are all inclusive essentially. They include the construction cost, the incidental, which is the design and management of construction, and any other contingencies, attorneys, financial advisors, all the things that that go into making the construction happen. So these are all been rolled up into one sum, so you can see sort of the scale and magnitude of what we're looking at. So elementary school, as I said, $9.7 million. The middle school, high school, around $2.6 million, so certainly receiving a lot less attention. Alternate scope that I listed that were itemized, that's about another 1.2 million. And right now, the sheets you're looking at, if you looked at the base project and alternate lines, they're totaling around 13.5 million, and that's all inclusive. That would represent what a referendum amount would potentially be. So further breaking down the costs into highlights, classroom additions are about $3 million of that 13.5 total. Elementary school classrooms. Now we talked about reducing the amount of classrooms from 34 or 32 to 22. So this is what we came up with after prioritizing the oldest of all the classrooms. So 5.7 million is a huge piece of the pie, essentially. Then mechanical, again, not small. We're taking care of the major heating plant for the elementary school as a major item, but 2.7 in mechanical and ventilation. Roofing ends up being about 1.1 million, and then the rest of the pie is about 1 million. So I'll get into a couple of financial considerations next. So we want to talk about how do we pay for a project. Essentially, for capital construction, the state provides building aid for these items. So your building aid ratio, as far as I know, is 70%. That's subject to change, but it should land in that range. What we've built as the scope that I just presented should all be state aidable. So for every dollar, you're paying 30 cents on a dollar as long as everything qualifies for aid. That includes everything else, the incidentals that I mentioned, the design, the construction manager, and the attorneys, all of that also aided, all lumped in. Oftentimes school districts, in order to present a referendum to the public, they'll use previously established capital reserve funds. These capital reserves are essentially the nest egg to offset the tax impact. You know you're going to need to replace the roof on your house at some point, so you start saving up. So responsibly, Greenville has been saving up and has a capital reserve fund and continues to build a capital reserve fund, and that allows project referendums to be presented to the public at what we call a tax neutral or at no additional tax impact. You've already saved the money to offset what isn't state aided. So the way the state aid works is once you bond a project, you essentially borrow the money, and then you pay that back over 15 years, and as you pay it back, the state aids you over 15 years. So it coincides with your debt service payments, and if you work it all out, and I know you folks have a financial advisor that has currently advised you that with a particular plan in place, a capital project could be presented this year, and the total, all-inclusive total limitation that I've been told is around $13,665,000. I know it's pretty dry stuff, but it's good information. So, if you, go ahead.
So just to clarify, we save up $2 million in the capital reserve. With that $2 million, then we can leverage that up to $13 million with no impact to the taxpayer. Am I understanding that correctly?
That's exactly right.
Okay.
I wouldn't quote you on the, I wouldn't talk to me about the actual numbers. The financial advisor will let you know what you can leverage, but that's the concept. It's leveraging what you've saved into a much larger project. It's relatively simple concept, and to not essentially to not move forward with a capital project when you have needs like roofs and boilers, it's difficult. What you'd end up doing is still needing roofs and boilers, but you wouldn't be able to leverage that capital reserve money into a $13 million project. You would just pay for the boilers for the $2 million, and that would be that. So leveraging the state aid is an amazing thing to take advantage of. And as far as I'm concerned, it seems like you've done it over the years. You've made a number of improvements and done it all, without having to, pass a project referendum with a tax impact. So that would be the plan again here.
So Tracy, what it means, we already have $2 million in the capital reserve.
Correct.
At the next vote, we're going to put up for vote a proposition to open up another capital reserve. And we would like to hopefully put $500,000 into the new capital reserve. So when this project comes around, we'll have 2.5 million of capital reserve to make it to the 13,665.
Okay, that was the missing part. Thank you for clarifying. Duncan?
Well, if we don't do this project now, what happens is we're in a point where we're paying off the ones that are in process now of being paid off. We wind up with excess revenue in the next budget year. And then if we do the project after that, we've got to go back out and raise that money again. Understand what I'm saying? We would have
Not
money.
retiring debt, so
Say again?
we're not retiring debt.
There is debt being retired from the
There always-
previous.
There always is debt.
Okay,
Yeah.
there always is, yeah, okay.
That's the way we plan this. So if we don't do it this year, there's a bump. We wind up with quote-unquote what appears to be a benefit to the taxpayer in that we would have to raise a lot less money or a relative amount less money. Okay, but then the next time we do the project, there's going to be that big bump. So it's important that we do this project this year. Right?
I agree.
I think that's what Donegan told us last year.
I had questions about the timing, but that would be a separate conversation.
Okay.
So,
All right. And I have two questions. You talked about hazardous material. I assume you're talking asbestos.
Yes.
Isn't a state mandate that if you do renovation and there is asbestos available, you have to eradicate that? You couldn't renovate on an existing floor that, if you go in to do renovation and discover asbestos, it's my understanding it has to be eradicated.
It's not completely black and white.
Okay.
For instance, if you have flooring, oftentimes the older tiles are 9 inches by 9 inches. Those are commonly vinyl asbestos tiles. Oftentimes they last a very long time and they hold up very well. And you have those floors in your buildings.
Right.
What we look for is any that are getting damaged or water damaged where they start chipping away. If we run into anything, if we're replacing pipes and they're insulated with any sort of asbestos, that stuff is gone, has to go.
Yep.
But you're not necessarily mandated to actively seek out the hidden asbestos in your building and get rid of it. But if you are touching it whatsoever with work that you're doing otherwise, it's got to go.
Okay, that was my question. And I'm wondering if you made that, when you did the alternatives, did you take into account that if they had asbestos, it had to go and had to be replaced?
Not necessarily with the alternatives. In general, when we do, when we build the pricing for probable costs in construction, we're building a lot of the potential for finding asbestos into those numbers, and those will make the numbers much larger.
Yeah.
If you don't
need it, you don't need it. That's good.
Yeah, if you count on it being hidden and it's not there, great. We'll do more work somewhere else. But having the surprise and then having it shut your project down is not a good situation.
Well, okay, let me go on the converse then.
Mm-hmm.
In the 22 that you're recommending for renovation,
Yes.
by definition, that includes replacing the floors.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So when we did the 2 classroom floors that we touched,
I remember we had asbestos and they had to come out. I remember that being told.
Yeah. But interestingly enough, not all the flooring in those rooms was asbestos. The main floor that was installed in, I don't know, the 30s when it was a cafeteria or a library, that was linoleum and it was not asbestos containing. But as the spaces changed or the floors failed, there was tiles installed to patch the old linoleum. The newer vintage tiles that were used to patch were asbestos, so those had to come out. And
the net result is I want to make sure that the alternative is in fact, even though there are minor renovations in the 12 rooms you talked about, that we've included the asbestos funds replacement. That's my only concern.
Yeah, where it's feasible. I can't speak to them being completely eradicated for asbestos. If we have the money, there's a lot of ways this can be sliced. This is sort of the problem with answering completely directly. For 12 classrooms, we have roughly $400,000 allocated, and that doesn't come close to renovating them all fully. But for that $400,000, you could renovate 3 or 4 completely and eradicate the asbestos in 3 or 4, or you could replace all of the cabinetry and cubicles that is falling apart in those areas, and where those are touching asbestos, the asbestos would be removed. But
and you can get away with that.
Absolutely.
Just removing the portion that's being okay. It was my understanding once you cut it, you had to take it out. Okay.
You want to be smart about it. I mean, you don't want to.
I'm not trying to belabor it.
No,
if you guys know you can do it, I'm cool with that. I just wanted to make sure that was incorporated.
No, we would essentially advise you to proceed with logic. Where it's going to be more expensive tomorrow to take it out, I'm going to take it out today because it makes the most sense. I'm not going to leave it for the sake of leaving it. So it would be important to proceed with common sense and logic on like a case-by-case basis as you run into it. That's not to say that the initiative for this project in, say, those 12 classrooms doesn't just change to, I know the floors are asbestos containing, let's get rid of them all. That's a possibility, but the things that I think about when you're replacing asbestos floors, because a lot of schools do it, is there's a lot of stuff sitting on the floors that all of a sudden you have to replace or remove and put back, and some of the cabinetry won't survive that, and your mechanical systems, if they're not otherwise being replaced by the project, those are kind of expensive tertiary items that can really drive the cost up. So there's a lot to explore.
And I just have one other question that's somewhat related. In the alternatives, is it normal that you ask for a bid for the total identified project or sub-project pieces in the alternative, or do you ask for things piecemeal? In other words, could we ask, and would bidders provide a specific price on each one, as opposed to, you have here 501,000 as the alternative, or 501 million. What is that?
Yeah, 1,000, you were right.
Okay, 501,000, okay? That's all inclusive. Would they bid on the project based on that, or would they bid on the project based on individual pieces?
No, you would absolutely individualize each and every bid alternative at that time.
So we could we could do some of the alternative and not all of it. That's
absolutely
really,
that's what you want to end up with.
Yes.
You want to end up with a project that you're very confident can come in under your construction budget, and then you want to have alternates. If your base bid came in favorable and it's less money, you want to have a little bit of a laundry list of alternatives so you can really fine-tune how much you can award right away.
Good.
And we would help you through that process, but essentially you want to make it as versatile as you possibly can for bid time, but you don't want to get to a point that it's cumbersome for a bidder because they get sort of tired of 100 different alternates. Sure.
So on the portion about the 12 classrooms, it mentions replacing the cabinetry only because we've seen the classrooms with the very old linoleum. They're all in very excellent shape. There isn't damage to them, so technically we don't have to replace them. But once you see the classrooms in the older part of the school all being upgraded, we wanted to have it be somewhat equal by having upgraded cabinetry, at least in those other classrooms. So we would make sure that it's abated at least and replace the cabinetry, because the floor, I personally think, looks really nice. And you have to have it in good shape and not falling apart. And it will last, basically practically forever. So that will last until the next project. So if we have them, basically new cabinetry in those 12 classrooms, will at least function equally to the new, fully renovated classrooms.
Yeah, that's very true, because the cabinets obviously get the most wear and tear out of everything, and if you've got a solid floor, it's going to keep up and be a solid floor for a little while longer. Any other questions about scope or
I have a question.
financial items?
But if you can hold on 1 second, I don't want to surprise you, Janet, but do we have debt, and you can get back to me, do we have debt retiring before this project would hit the books?
Not before.
Not before?
Not before.
What is the time frame on the nearest debt retiring?
When this starts.
When this starts?
Yes. We planned it that way.
Okay, so it's before, I thought.
Not before.
I was thinking that when this project is completed, and then we have to start paying for it, that's what I meant. But we'll have debt retired before.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh, okay.
And is that amount equivalent to what would be taken on here?
That I'd have to look up.
Okay, we can do that. For you, when you did the 2 classrooms last summer, we called it a pilot project because you learned a lot, right? Was there any discovery in that that surprised you, and then how did that affect the estimate?
Surprises. I mean, there's always surprises. In all cases, we discovered them during the design process in our investigation phases, but all those ceilings have a second ceiling above them, for instance. There's like a mile of space above most of those ceilings, and attic space on the second floor. But
Well, what I'm trying to get at is if you did those 2 classrooms, right, and we're going to use those as a model for the rest of them, especially in that whole front section, you would think that they would be almost identical, right, all the way down that hallway.
Pretty close.
Era of construction of those, and then probably era of any kind of renovation. I'm looking for information on whether or not you learned from those 2 renovations, and if the data you put together for us here, your bid on these things, your estimate, would be more reliable because of what you learned on those 2 renovations.
I can confirm that's absolutely the case.
Okay.
The numbers, we actually we hoped to do 3, maybe 4 classrooms for the $190,000 that was budgeted originally, and we got 2, and it was just barely affordable for that amount of money. And a lot of that is a sign of the times, everything that we heard about with the prices of things and the cost of construction and the lack of labor. Those certainly drove the costs up, but in these numbers, we're being as absolutely responsible and conservative as we can be, and use those numbers pretty closely, plus a reasonable escalation to get us to when we'll actually have shovels in the ground.
That's actually what I'm working toward, because if I'm looking at this chart correctly, right, 20% for general conditions and construction contingency, and then 22% more, correct?
Right, the 22
on top of that.
On top of that is
to manage it.
The aidable limit to manage it. Oftentimes, you know, in reality, that's a project could be, you know, 18% of the construction value for incidentals. It depends on, you know, how much new furniture you're putting in and equipment you're buying from the incidental budget a lot of times.
All right, I'm sure you have a history of having money left over in that 20%, correct, that you can find?
Yes, so there's a couple of things that happen in a typical, say, large construction project. When you award bids, you know what you're going to spend on incidentals before you bid a project. When you bid and award the actual construction to do the work, you typically budget what you want, you know, what your limit for spending on contracts is, and then you have to set aside a percentage, a contingency for the unforeseen items during construction. So oftentimes that's 6 or 7% of, you know, 10 million on a larger capital project, and that 6 or 7% is for the stuff you don't know, because the contractor's going to tear a lot of things out and discover different things. They're going to open a wall and, you know, maybe find pipes with asbestos on them, and it could drive costs up during construction. We wouldn't advise you go into construction with no sort of contingency money to be able to cover the unknowns that you might run into. So oftentimes those conservative contingency budgets transmit into available money at the end of the project that you just didn't spend. You might also have contingency or additional incidental budget because you budgeted conservatively, and then you underspent that limit because you're trying to be fiscally responsible. You might end up with a bit of money at the end of a project, you know, if things are going as planned. So there are opportunities to spend down those things and do more construction after the fact, which is often how it happens, just because you need to have a little bit of savings to be able to ensure that you're not going to have a surprise you can't afford.
Yeah, I understand that.
And then you essentially get to the end of the project and say, well, I'm not going to have any more surprises. Now we can spend this money on, you know, some of the alternative items that we, you know, went by the wayside in the planning process, whatever it may be.
In your history of doing this for schools, is that 20% common, or has it gone up over your tenure?
For which? The incidentals?
No, just the 20% of general conditions. Quite frankly, that looks to me like, you know, it's a fudge factor. You don't really know what you're going to run into.
Yeah, the reality is when we build these sheets, we really try to strike a balance between being responsible and not, you know, conservative but not over conservative. So the way the general conditions is built, I could talk for hours if you really want me to. But if you looked at construction costs just as the person that's actually swinging the hammer, what he's going to charge you on site to just do the job, that's one cost. To actually get to what a bidder will bid to hire that person and hire the person's company and include layers of overhead and profit and, you know, you're requiring bonds, and you're requiring, you know, it's prevailing wage to do public work, all those things sort of add up. So when I actually estimate a project, and I identify the actual construction cost, typically there's so many adders to get to your what should the price be, it ends up being closer to 40% when you do that. So when we build these sheets, we build a reasonable construction cost. That's a little bit more than the bare minimum that it'll cost somebody. And then instead of adding 40% on top of that to get the numbers, we separate the 20% of general conditions. Having it separated allows us to make a judgment as to whether we shrink it or enlarge it, but in this case, it's, you know, again, we're trying to strike a balance of what's responsible and what we can, with confidence, go to taxpayers and say, if you say yes to this number, you know, and you let us spend this money on this work, we're going to deliver on our promise to deliver that work. And that's a difficult promise these days, especially over the last 2 or 3 years. So, I mean, your questions and points are very valid, and it's very difficult to, you know, put your finger on where things could actually land. But yeah, it's hard to look at the numbers and actually have a sense that it's not just a, you know, crazy amount that somebody's guessing at. So we use, you know, our countless sort of jobs that get estimated and jobs that get bid to try to influence this to get to a reasonable probable cost. And at the end of the day, you know, we really want to get good bid numbers, and we want to get more than what this shows for our money, because it matters. And that's what you'll end up getting. Of course, if I've given you numbers and my numbers end up 20% high, you'll have 20% of your money left over at the end, and, you know, that's, you know, to how many years ago now? 15 years ago, that was happening. That was the norm, to bid a project in 2008 and be 20% low, and then you start thinking about what other things you deleted from the list in the process, and you can really increase your project.
Jay.
I have a few questions. For starters, though, just to make sure I'm following correctly, I understand that the biggest project we could do to maintain no tax impact, the largest capital project we could do that wouldn't have an impact to the tax levy, would be a little
advisor if you enact the plan that you're proposing with your budget. That is accurate.
So we would be looking to whittle this sheet down, right? Or am I not reading it correctly?
Right now, this sheet with the base project and alternates comes close to 13.5 million, so it's actually under your cap.
Right.
Pardon?
Bottom two right figures.
So adding the project and alternate, the bottom two right cells together, the project and alternate gets you to about 13.5.
Yes.
Okay. You mentioned installing more efficient lighting, right?
Yes, whenever we're touching a space, we definitely want to do more efficient lighting.
So if you're talking about more efficient lighting or equipment or mechanical systems, are you also looking for incentives through the state? There are incentive programs out there to support the cost of upgrading, like for efficiency upgrades.
Yes, yeah, we've often taken advantage of NYSERDA grants and things like that. Mainly it revolves around lighting replacement. There's usually you know, thousands of dollars that you can, you know, we've helped clients apply for to get money back on those things. Absolutely.
But is that reflected in the estimate, or is the district planning to do that outside of the estimate?
it's not, the savings after the fact is not reflected in the estimate, and it's a funny thing with how grant payback works and interrelated with capital projects. In my experience, you can't actually pay the project back. It's savings. You have to take the savings independently toward your budget or whatever expenses you have. So you can't balance ins and outs within a capital project. They just don't allow it. So this reflects the whole cost. If a grant writes you a check for $50,000 at the end of it, you can't necessarily put it back in the project and do more work. You have to just take the money and run, I guess.
Okay.
But the engineers help
I'm sorry, could you repeat that? I couldn't hear you.
the engineers that work on projects with us help with the grants.
Okay, thanks. So my other questions are not really questions so much as I just would like more information. I mean, this discussion spreadsheet is really helpful to understand the scope of what we're talking about, but for me it's not enough to make a decision based on, because there's just, I need more. So the information that I would like to have is, could we have a narrow description of each of these lines, different pieces of the project, just to explain, give some explanation of what that line is, why it's needed, kind of the priority, is it needed now? If so, why? Why can't it wait? If maybe it could wait, again, why? What are the risks? Where it's a mechanical system, you mentioned a few, or like boiler or other systems might be near the end of useful life. And a similar question, why now? Why can't it wait? I mean, there's some equipment, may not apply to this, but I know that if equipment is well maintained, even if you get to the end of its useful life or maybe beyond, you can continue, it can continue operating well for a while. So some assessment there for where it's relevant to the projects also would be appreciated.
Jay, if I could just for a second, we do have a couple members. A lot of what you're asking was brought through our district facilities, so we can get that information to you based on the work that was done through that committee.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, there's lots of data. As the group explored all these items and delved into each of them individually, there's lots of data that can be shared from that facilities group that I think will answer a lot of your questions.
Great, and I understand, Eric, you've probably seen all this what the committee has, but I would like to see that explanation of what we're actually being presented and why now. And I understand your point that with whatever incentives might be available for some of the state incentives through the energy efficiency programs or federal programs, whatever, that you can't, if I might not be saying this correctly, but I think you said you can't factor it into the costs and debt service here of the project. But if there are incentives out there, I think we should be looking for them. So the other question is, what incentive programs might we be able to tap into to support the work? How much money might we be able to get, and what's the plan to go after it? I don't know if that was considered by the committee. I don't know if that even falls into your purview, even with the engineers who might help. But if we could get that information too, because there are a lot of incentives out there. I don't know how big an impact it might be for the lighting program or some others, but there's money out there that's available to support some of the elements that you're talking about. And if there's a program out there that can do that, we should be trying to take advantage of it and planning for that.
Yep. Yeah, and just to make one more point about the incentives, that's something that we would normally, we want to start the process now, but as sort of the months go by, and the project is designed and identified and all those things, that's an active process that we're sort of constantly checking in with that data. And depending on when the project hits, the grants have sort of sunrise and set dates, and hopefully we hit the right ones at the right time. Sure.
Okay. Thank you. Thanks, Mike.
Any other questions?
I do want to mention something. Mine doesn't turn on, but I'll speak.
Jay's.
Just the answer for Jay is a typical lifespan for a package boiler is about 15 years. my understanding is we're at 30 years in the elementary school and 25 years in the high school. So by putting them off, we're spending more money every single day by just having them. So not only to replace them, we will cut our overhead down quite a bit. So we're way past what the typical lifespan is on these, and you can't increase the efficiency anymore. So just letting you know.
I appreciate that, Jim. Sorry. Respond to this. I appreciate and understand. That makes sense. It's just that's part of the information that would be helpful to understand, you know, the what, the why, and the when.
We can do coffee on Saturday.
You gonna show them all the spreadsheets? Duncan.
Did the facilities committee recommend this?
Yes.
I think our role is understanding the fiscal impact of what we're doing. And I appreciate your concern, and I'm not trying to minimize it at all. But we had a committee who looked at that. And if they're putting this forward, our role is to try to make sure that we keep the impact on our annual budget, and especially how it affects the taxpayers, as even as we can. And we're where we are now because we're trying to do that. And if we don't take the action we need to take, then we're gonna have that big blip that nobody wants.
I understand, and I agree with the approach of trying to maintain a level amount of capital investment so that we don't have that impact to the budget and the tax levy, and we don't have the ups and downs. You know, I get that and I support that. I trust the committee that's reviewed it. I'm not trying to second guess it. I don't want to go into the details and like really kind of reinvent the wheel here. However, I think to be presented with a capital project, we need to understand, you know, what we're being asked to approve and why. What's the need? Why now? That doesn't need to be a deep dive to go through the same process the committee already did, but enough information so that we could actually understand what we're being asked to approve and why, so we have some basis for the decision to approve it or not.
And I think it just kind of comes down to sharing of all the information so that when we're at Stewart's and we get a question of, well, why did you decide to do the boiler now? We can say, oh, well, it's because it has outlived its lifespan and it,
Costing us more to run it.
Exactly. So sometimes the information doesn't always.
Oh yeah, I'm all for the information coming out. I just want to make sure we don't have to sit around and wait and not approve this as part of the budget.
Fair.
I mean, that's why we're here tonight. That's scary to me.
So, if I can just close out that comment. Very valid points. We obviously want to, I came in here to sort of paint the broad strokes picture to get you updated in a short amount of time. Obviously, the board needs to be informed, and the board, sitting as members of the public, can imagine that everybody that comes to cast a vote is going to want to have those exact same answers to be able to know and trust in the decision making of the school district and the school board. So that information can easily be made available to anybody that wants to invest the time in diving deep.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
We appreciate that.
So there's a couple more things schedule-wise. I'm sure you've read some of these things, but as far as the time frame for a capital project vote, if you're looking at December of this year, obviously the process continues, but the real sort of drop-dead dates start to happen beginning in August and moving forward September, October, to make everything fall into place. So obviously, with your budget vote, you'll be laying the groundwork for making something like this possible. But when it comes to the public vote, you've got a little bit of time to really dig into what's in and what's out and what's included as you see fit.
Could you just, do we have a copy of this presentation? Now, could you send Daphne Pearson a copy of this presentation? Just, if we
Yes.
need to, we can put it up in board docs if anyone
I will
wants to
have
reference it.
the flash drive handed over to Daphne.
Thank you.
At the end of this, it's yours to keep. And a copy of this document's in it,
We all have it.
as well as this. So, obviously, just to wrap up on schedule items, moving past a potential of a December vote, you'd be looking at, the design and permitting process of a major capital project is usually a calendar year. So you'd be looking at being able to bid approximately a year from when your vote is. And then you can imagine there's a bid process, and then we assume in most projects this size happening in schools where summer is sort of the prime construction phase, that it would be a 2 summer project. So it would span beginning in 2024 and span past the summer of 2025. And that's, I believe, what I have. It's over.
Thank you for being patient. I know we ask a lot of questions, but it's just for us to wrap our heads around. So
Yeah,
thank you.
I wasn't kidding. I could sit and talk for hours if somebody starts
Thank
showing
you.
interest in
Bye.
that too.
Stuart is right down the road. There's a lot of people who listen to you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Matt and Joanne.
All right, thank you all.
We appreciate it. It's a lot of information and good information. With that, I'm going to turn it over. Our next point for presentation is the budget development update by Superintendent Mike Bennett and Janet Messerman, our business official.
Yes, so Janet and I will kind of tag team this presentation, kind of go through. As you can imagine, this is our fourth round at the budget right now. Early this morning, we got some information on final runs as far as our financial package and what that looked like. So Janet has been working feverishly most of the day to update numbers to make sure that we are on top of where we needed to be. So we'll kind of go through this presentation and take a look at where we're at. First slide we've got is our state aid projections, which I had indicated. We received word this morning that we were at about $68,000, almost $69,000 less than what we had originally put into our budgets. Everything we had been hearing from the state up to this point had been in and around, it was going to be a good year. We're going to be made whole again with some of the financial package coming back. So we were a little caught off guard with getting a little less than that. We also received word that we had a decrease in our state aid around textbooks. And then last, our computer hardware aid, small number, but something that's important for us to understand and capture within this. Overall, we're looking at about $73,000, $72,119 less state aid than we had originally planned for. So in order to keep our number where we wanted to keep our tax levy where we were at, we had to go in and take a look at a couple of different things in regards to where that was going to come from, so there wasn't going to be a drastic change in our presentation. So with that is our property tax cap and tax levy. Our tax levy limit for us this year was going to be at 3.56%, or as close to $18 million in school tax levy amount. We had some discussion at earlier board meetings to talk about keeping the tax levy down around 2.25 and not going all the way up to that 3.56. Again, a number that we could work with that we felt pretty good about. And then we talked about that at our March 8th meeting. So if you take a look at some of the past years and where we're at to where we are at in 2022-23 school year. You know, and again, that's to where we're at now, where we agreed on March 8th for the 2.25. Appropriated fund balance. I'm going to let Janet take over this slide and talk a little bit about our appropriated fund balance.
So we increased the appropriated fund balance by $49,261. That was because of the famous capital outlay of the dust collector and the ventilation system, because we had to increase the budget for that. So that's the reason why we increased the unplanned fund balance. So when the state aid came in lower, I did not want to touch that, because we try not to go overboard with that, because if you go overboard with it, then when you have your lean years and you need to take some of that away, then you have to tax the people more. So you want to try to keep that in a steady area or reduce it. So on the next slide is the revenue summary from last year to this year. The largest part of the school district revenue is real estate taxes, which is the 52.67% of the budget. State aid is 41.89%, and then we have the miscellaneous revenue of 5.44% of the budget. The next slide shows the adjustments to the budget.
Yeah, so right here, we see where we wanted to make our adjustments to the budget. A couple of factors changed in. We did get our new rates. You know, our original budget, preliminary budget, was at 33.7. Some of the things that we looked to reduce in the area of health and safety supplies. As you know, as we've gone into more in this year, we had budgeted for additional monies that we didn't end up having to spend out for some of the COVID protections. So we saw a reduction there. Health insurance, we received just last week, I believe, our reduction of $32,000 for our new rates. So we show that in the budget as a reduction as well. The next couple of items, when we budget our for the Bard College and for STEM High School, it really is tied to the programming at the high school with student interest and things like that. So we had originally budgeted for 2 students to go to Bard, and what we have communicated from the high school is that we only have 1 student right now who is at least interested in going there and being a part of that program. So we removed the other cost at a tune of about $11,000. Same with the STEM High School. We currently have 3 students who are attending STEM High School. We have budgeted for a 4th, and as of this time right now, we do not have any additional student being interested in the STEM High School program. So that's an additional reduction of $13,500. Now, these programs often have to have decisions made by May 1st, so we're going with these calculations that we're getting from the high school as far as not having additional interest, so that need we could reduce to help offset some of that money we knew that we were going to be losing for financial aid. Late bus run, originally we had planned for an extra run throughout the course of after school. Mary and her department's done a very good job of taking a look at that and condensing runs in order for us to find a cost savings there of about $5,000. Project ELA is part of a $30,000 program that we're working on to take a look at some of our ELA professional development, some of the things we're doing with that. And so what we've done is taken a look at taking $10,000 away from that. If need be, we can take a look at grants to, if we decide next year to use the full $30,000, some of the monies that we got through grants, through ESSER, we could easily fund the 10 grand out of that. Questar was our virtual academy. The school district had been charged. We had none of our students taking part in that, and that's not going to be offered next year. We just received word that Questar 3 will not be offering the virtual academy. So that, once again, is an $11,000 savings to our budget. A couple of additions. Obviously, we heard our FFA group do a wonderful job on the cost of things going up. Fuel is certainly among that. So with stuff starting back up and transportation needing both fuel and some supplies, that's an additional $9,000 that we would add to the budget based on what we know at this point. The $11,000, almost $12,000 non-instructional salaries was part of the GPF contract. We had originally budgeted during, prior to the negotiations going through that, a certain amount. We went a little bit higher with that, which raised that addition up to about $12,000. And then the umbrella insurance, I'm going to ask Janet to talk about that because she's explained it to me about 12 times and I'm still not exactly sure what the umbrella insurance is all about.
It's our general liability insurance for the school district. So that only had a slight increase from our estimate to actual for $139. So then that will bring the budget amount a little bit lower than we started in March.
So when we're asked to present the budget, it's a three-part components to the budget, the administrative capital and the program. And really what this takes a look at is where our monies go in regards to budget. Program obviously is the biggest chunk of our budget, taking up close to 74% of the budget. This is everything that includes, our programs for kids and what we do with that. Next biggest part is our capital part of our component. And finally, the administrative costs, everything from contracts to different things within the administrative component of the budget. I'm going to let Janet kind of talk about the three parts in a little bit more detail here.
So this slide shows the administrative component, which is all included in here, is the clerical staff, school board costs, insurance, central processing, some employee benefits, lawyer fees, and that equals the increase is a 4.38% increase from last school year. The next page is a capital component. This covers the maintenance and the custodial staff, debt service, utilities, facility costs, service contracts, maintenance, and repairs. So this has a 6.36% increase from last year. The program component covers salary and benefits of all teachers, staff delivering pupil services, textbooks, instructional materials, equipment, BOCE program costs, and transportation. So this has a 1.42% increase from last school year. This slide shows the expenditures by glance. So it shows you the salaries of the whole school district and the benefits. Most of that is by union contract. That takes up 72.43% of the budget. Then we have contractual services and tuition. We have tuition for special education students. That's 8.39% of the budget. BOCE services, so that's some of the, some of the CTE programs, the welding, and we have other software that we use that we buy through BOCES so we can get the BOCES aid. That increase, that is 8.55% of the budget. Debt service and intra-fund transfer to capital is a 7.88% of the budget. And then we have inter-fund transfers to federal. That pays for the summer handicapped children. We have to pay 20% of that cost, and the state pays 80% of that cost. So that's 0.18% of the total budget. And then we have equipment, materials and supplies and textbooks, and that is 2.57% of the budget.
So as you can see in that pie chart does a great job of talking about and looking at the expenditures that we have are really tied around salaries, contracts, tuition bills, things like that. There's very little there that we can actually play with. It's probably about that 2.57% number with equipment and materials and supplies and textbooks. So a lot of our budget that we put out there is really tied up in different contracts and tuitions and things. So as we move through the preliminary budget, we're at the $33,697,442, up a slight increase from the $32,800 from last year, about $800,000, just over $800,000 dollar increase, which puts us at a 2.47% increase. Tax levy again set at the 17.7 with an increase of about almost $400,000 with a percentage increase of 2.25.
And Mike, what is the maximum that we could go to for the percent increase?
I believe it was like 3.56, if I remember correctly.
Correct.
Yep, 3.56. Okay. So again, it was a conversation at the March 8th board meeting that the board did not feel comfortable going out at that high of a number, at 3.56. So the discussion really revolved around that 2.25. So that was the parameters that we worked within. So next step, our annual budget hearing on May 3rd will take place in Middle High School Auditorium at 6:30. Also, we'll have our board election budget vote on May 17th at the Scott Ellis Elementary School cafeteria. Questions?
Well, Mike, I'll ask you a couple questions again. First of all, I want to say thanks for answering all the questions I've given you too. Some of them were not easy to answer, I understand. I'm assuming that, Janet, you probably looked at the new numbers for all the neighboring school districts, or did they all come out the way we did, or that's what I looked at it.
You mean at the total tax levy and the total percentage?
Well, did they work out to be deficit, or did they get additional money, Carol?
Oh, you mean the state aid?
Yeah.
State aid.
Theirs stayed neutral, so I asked our state aid planning why ours foundation aid came down by $68,000. And what they told me is that the governor looks at a certain set of numbers, and the legislators look at another set of numbers. So they look at how many enrollment. They do a weighted average of enrollment. And the governor, I don't know where she got hers, and the legislator, they take it from the VEDS information. So the difference was 40 students, which made foundation aid come down. I don't know where the governor is.
So the governor has this governor's mainframe that she uses to determine, it's based on previous averages, over like 2 or 3 year averages. And what the legislature does is they take a look at our actual beds numbers. So the governors put our enrollment at 1,352 average over the last couple of years. And our beds number, actual bed numbers, was 40 students less. And so that's how they justified the less money for us.
Okay. The person you spoke with, well, you probably didn't ask them that question, because certainly the politicians are promoting that they put more money into the budget than she even asked for, the governor asked for. So I wondered how, as far as school aid went, where the money went. It didn't come here.
Well, they do show like BOCES aid being increased, but they don't show how or why. So I'm being conservative with keeping with what BOCES told me what our aid would be. I'm just a little nervous on how they came up with a little bit of more BOCES aid, but it still wouldn't offset the $68,000.
Yeah, that's a great point. Besides fuel, which you said that we haven't got a hard number on that yet, right?
No.
What else is out there that we don't have a hard number on? Anything large?
Anything large? Pretty much just the fuel.
Okay, good. The insurance, health insurance was a surprise.
It came in a little bit lower, yeah.
Right,
I estimated at 6.1% and it came in at 5.9.
Thank you.
Other questions for the budget? Okay, thank you very much. Now the last presentation, we have Instructional Technology Plan by Scott Gardner, the Director of Technology.
Great, I get to be the last of the 3 long presentations. This won't be shorter, I promise.
How many 100 pages of this is this?
I have 4 pages of notes, so it's not 100. All right, so technology plan. Just a quick background. Every 3 years, we're required by SED to submit a technology plan to SED. They started this really about 10 years ago, and it's had various forms, but right now it's an electronic portal that we have to submit to. We got it passed last year because of COVID, so you'll see that that's why we have a gap in the years. So the plan you're looking at tonight is the 2022 to 2025 technology plan. The technology committee is really the keeper of the plan. We've met multiple times this past year to review our previous plan, get some input from stakeholders, and then compile the plan that you have before you. You can see the stakeholders that we chose to get input from this year was faculty, students, and their families. One other important part to keep in mind, the technology plan doesn't define everything we do with technology in the district. It's really just a narrow set of what the state wants to see our district is doing that aligns with the state technology plan. So the state puts a technology plan out that kind of gives you a guideline for what instructional technology looks like in each of the districts. And our plan that you have before you is just a subset of what aligns with that plan. In other words, non-instructional systems aren't taken into account. You know, security, safety, cameras, phones, all those other items. It's just instructional technology. Okay. If you want to read through this is the 5 tenets of the state technology plan. Everything that's in our plan does align to one of these 5 priorities. I won't spend a lot of time there. You can go back and read that at some point, but it's a broad-based, and we have to align to these. So on to our plan. We have 4 goals in our plan this cycle. The first is an infrastructure goal, and you can see that there were, we may, in each of these goals in the plan, if you have the detailed plan before you, I probably have maybe 8 action steps under each goal. I'm only listing up here for tonight the top 3 or 4. And you can see here, we have a very large dependency on the wireless network in our district. And so this first part of infrastructure is really to upgrade and provide additional access points where we're a little deficient. It's to upgrade our controllers, which are really the brains of the Wi-Fi network, both to improve performance and provide some redundancy in case we lose a piece of equipment. And then along with that, as you branch out from the heart of the network into network closets, we are continually upgrading network switches in our data closets to make them high performing to meet the ever growing demand of data that flows through our district. So that's really the first goal. Purely, it's like hardware and infrastructure. Goal 2, this is really more about access and providing students with sufficient access to do what they need to do. And this was a direct result of some of the survey data that we put out, both from families and from anecdotal responses from teachers. We really want to make sure that students' families have access to internet and that the devices that we provide them are capable of doing the work that teachers are requiring of them. That's really the tenet of this goal. And there's some metrics in there that we are hoping to obtain, and they're measurable. We do some of this stuff already, but we're looking to improve on what we're already doing. The one piece that is additional is increasing the available outdoor public Wi-Fi venues on campus. And this really has a twofold access. One, it's providing access to our students, for more use outside, but also for our community. We pay for a high-speed connection. It's underutilized in the off hours. We want to make sure that if someone pulls into our parking lot, they can get public Wi-Fi and use it. Their tax money paid for it. We should make that benefit available to them. And also, families that struggle with connections, it's one more place that they can come and possibly do work. Question, yeah?
Scott, so when you talk about it, for example, someone could pull up to the high school parking lot, would the whole lot then be accessible? Because I think right now you have to be really close to the circle.
That's the issue, right? So right now the bus loop is pretty well covered, and maybe a little bit in the rear parking lot. This would light up all of our areas. So anywhere there's pavement, anywhere parking lots, as well as sports fields, all the new area we have in the last capital project, that would all be lit up with this.
One of the committee members wanted to put an A&W drive-in out there too. Vetoed that.
Thank you.
Next goal is, this has to do with instruction and professional development. So there's one general tenet to this and then one specific one. We used some of the federal money that was given to us to improve instruction to purchase a weather-based, a network-based weather station that really has applicability across all grade levels. And so that's one thing that's in the tech plan. We want to get this installed and have instruction at all grade levels and training, as well as continue to provide technology-based PD for all of our faculty and staff. And we gained a lot of good information from the faculty survey that we put out of, what are they looking to get trained on, or what are we, in addition to what we think they should be trained on. We have in the past provided a wide array of both content and method of delivery for our PD, and we would look to continue to do that, just change some of the content that we're teaching on.
Quick question, is
Yeah.
that weather data put out to the public and Weather
Yep.
Underground
Yep.
and so forth?
Yes, it's like Weather Underground, but it's a whole network. So once we sign on to this, right, we have our own live data that we share with the world, and there's, you know, curriculum and lessons or whatever can be developed off of that, but also we're able to look on their network and pull information from other places as well, other school districts that are participating.
Thank you.
Okay, last goal, goal number 4, and this really is an instructional goal. And in our last plan, we spent quite a bit of time developing these technology benchmarks. Really, what do we want a student to know how to do with technology at each grade level? That's really what this is talking about. And we were making good progress with this, and then we had to, everything had to shut down. And so, 2 things happened. One, we had the pandemic affected us, right? We had to shut down. The other thing that happened is the state came out with new digital fluency learning standards for technology. And because of those 2 things, the committee felt pretty strongly about the need to revisit these benchmarks. One, to ascertain where do our students stand with where we thought they should have been, and 2, in light of the new digital fluency learning standards, where do they stand? So really the 4th goal is really to do those 2 things, ascertain where we are, and then to you know, to review and evaluate and revise our benchmarks to incorporate all that.
Scott, question before we move on?
Yes.
So, did you say that you already have looked to see where students stand in respect to the benchmarks?
No,
That's
we know that's a need.
Okay.
And you know, we thought about, well, let's try to gauge that this year. Everybody's trying to gauge the learning loss this year. So we thought, we'll make this a goal in the plan, and we'll start this process next year. It's not, you know, technology learning is still happening. And so what we're going to find is, because of COVID, right, some technology learning is way up here now, right? They excelled in some areas, right? Some areas, not so much, right? It's like a lot of the learning that happened, right? So we have to be, we're trying to be aware of all that process going on in all these other subject areas. So technology is moving ahead. We just want to gauge where we are and where we're in light of where students should be. And to be honest, you know, you read through the new digital fluency learning standards, and it's good. We're doing a lot of what's already in there. So I don't expect a great change to these benchmarks, but it is a big enough delta that we want to, you know, take a look at it and see if there is a place we're missing. All right, you didn't hold me up because the last slide really is timeline, and as far as submitting this to the state. So we're probably 2/3 of the way down that list. I'm presenting the tech plan to you guys. Barring any big objections, we're going to submit this probably tomorrow to the NARIC, which is the entity the state is using to do the first draft approval of this plan. In other words, they're going to catch us if there's any big things that the state won't like. So it's like a pre-approval, if you will. So once you guys put your stamp approval on it and the NARIC says it's good, then we can officially submit it to the state, and we have until the 30th of June to do that.
Tell us what NARIC is, would it?
NARIC, it stands for Northeast Regional Information Center. There's 5 RICs across New York State. They're the technology data centers for the state. So the NARIC actually is the largest one in our state. It's like 170 school districts under their care, and they serve as a lot of the common. They serve like a BOCES. They're an arm of BOCES. They serve as BOCES does for common services. They do that for information services for all the BOCES and school districts in their area.
And we get, like BOCES, we can buy things through NARIC.
We do buy things through a lot of things, yeah.
Get discounts because of their power, and they also provide us with the pipelines that we use for.
Yeah, our internet comes through. We purchase through the RIC. Yep.
All our security off the, you know, websites you don't want to go to, that kind of thing.
And we do a lot of that because not only are they a solid vendor to purchase through, but of course we leverage the state aid, which in trying fiscal times is very important to do. We want to make sure we're being responsible there. Any other questions? Yeah.
How's NERIC on their turnaround time? Because if everyone has to submit in June, I'm assuming everyone's submitting through NERIC, or how does that work?
This is their second cycle in this process, so they've done a couple other one other plan cycle like this. Worked very well last time. I have no doubt that we submit tomorrow, we'll probably have feedback in late April, early May.
Scott, could you, through email, send us all where we could find these fluency standards and review them?
Oh, sure. Yep. Yeah, you can just Google New York State Digital Learning Standards, but I'll send it to you. I'll send you a link. Yep.
And Scott, I didn't hear if will any professional development be needed given the updated standards or no?
Oh, most likely. Yep.
Okay.
Once those benchmarks are set, we see areas where we're deficient, or areas like if we're just not meeting the mark on one of the standards that the state's put out, we'll have to figure out how we're going to incorporate that. Again, we're trying to get away from teaching technology for technology's sake, right? We really want to learn to incorporate that into learning across the board in a class. So we're looking to incorporate that into other areas that we're already doing training, if that makes sense.
I think so.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Right, it's integration of technology. It's not technology for technology's sake.
Right.
And I will just say that a lot of what we're currently doing falls within the scope of the digital literacy. So it's just, a lot of teachers don't even realize they're doing it. So it's really matching up what we're doing currently in those classrooms and matching it with the new standards. They're laid out quite nicely.
Yeah, I suspect 90% of our rework of those benchmarks will just be crosswalk of things we're already doing. Any other questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
That was
you.
one of the shortest presentations. Okay, so now I'm going to move us on to our action items. And I need a motion to approve the minutes from the business meeting of March 14, 2022.
I have Eric and Jim, thank you.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
I need a motion to approve the finance reports for the month ending March 31st, 2022.
Angela, second. Dave, thank you.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
I need a motion to accept the Committee on Special Education recommendations.
Dave and Eric, thank you.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Need a motion to approve the personnel agenda.
Eric, Angela, thank you.
Any discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Oh,
Did you want to discuss?
did you want to say something?
Only I want to congratulate all those people that got tenure, although that might be Mike's role.
I'm sure they appreciate it.
Yes, we will take a moment at a board meeting in June to recognize all those folks who got tenure. It's great to bring back the celebration and bring those folks back in and honor both our tenured folks and our retirees. So look for a celebration coming up. It's great work. It's great work by the teachers, great work by their mentors, and some credit to the administrators for overseeing some of the work that's been done.
Most of them are on the 4-year track, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yep. State had gone to a 4-year track now.
Duncan, did you vote for the personnel? You're good?
He had the question, I just,
Okay, I just
so
didn't see.
we interrupted
Okay.
I'm waiting for you to say all in favor.
Okay, so let me say it again then. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
That was the discussion, now we voted.
Okay, now we voted. All right, got the right order. I need a motion to adopt the 2022-2023 proposed school budget.
Okay, Eric, Angela, thank you.
Any discussion?
Since we were able to save the taxpayers well over $430,000, I think it's a solid budget.
Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
I need a motion to approve the real property tax report card for 2022-2023 for submission to the State Education Department.
Give me a second. Ms. Jay, thank you.
Okay, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Need a motion to, we are going to combine 7.7, 7.8, and 7.9, since they all relate to the same process. I need a motion to approve and Delaware, Chenango, Madison, Seago, BOCES for the school year of 2022-2023. The second one is a motion to approve the generic resolution between Greenville Central School District and the same.
DCMO BOCES. DCMO BOCES, that's quicker.
DCM?
DCMO BOCES.
DCMO BOCES, good. And the third one will be the approve the cafeteria supplies and food bid resolution between Greenville Central School District and DCMO BOCES. I got it right.
Duncan and Jim, thank you.
Any discussion on this one?
Yes. What is the generic resolution?
Right.
I mean, I understand the cafeteria supplies and I understand the cooperative purchasing, but what is the generics resolution part?
I believe it was for, like, one was for a committee, one was for putting the bids out there, and the other one was for opening or rewarding the bids. So it was like
So
all
it's the
three worked
administration
together.
part?
Yes.
Okay,
There it is.
okay.
We say we want to be part of it, they do the work.
Correct.
And they break it down into 3 separate components.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. I need a motion to approve a donation to the Greenville Central School District from Philippe Content and Tracy Young. Any discussion? I will be recusing myself from this vote. All in favor?
Aye. Thank you for your contribution.
You're welcome. I need a motion to approve surplus items.
Jay, give me a second. Dave, thank you.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Duncan?
Yes, aye,
Thank you.
sorry.
Okay, I'm going to turn it over for discussion points. The draft of the 22-23 school district calendar.
So yes, the calendar committee has gotten together, has taken a look at the upcoming school year and its calendar, put some time and work into some of the starting dates after Labor Day, with the ending date being the ratings day at the end of June. Getting our 186 days in, it seems like it's a pretty easy process to go through, but it really isn't when you start to take a look at holidays and where vacations need to fall. A lot of discussion around when certain things can take place. So the group has really put some time in. We're working a little bit with teachers union on potentially in the future having some flexibility in the way we can present those days. But this is what they're proposing at this point.
So at this point, then, we would approve it at the May meeting? Is that correct? Okay. All right, then I'd like to move on. I'll be giving a quick update on the Board of Education goals. So Daphne's passing around we've had a workshop as well as a follow-up meeting. And where we netted out is that the Board of Education created the 3 areas that we wanted to focus on, one being transparency, one being accountability, and one being analysis. So we worked with a moderator. And for transparency, our goal is to prioritize stakeholder relationships through open communication, transparency, and engagement. And we want to accomplish this by conducting workshops with the community on a periodic basis, and 2, reviewing the open forum procedures. I think we experienced a little bit of that today, so there is some wiggle room and so forth. So individual board members are working through some of the specific tasks related to those, and we have provided some due dates for that. The second goal that we're working on relates to accountability, and which the Board of Education wishes to foster an accountability culture throughout the district. We will accomplish this by identifying the top 3 priorities for the superintendent, and second, detailing input into a super eval according to a timeline. The third element that we wanted to focus on involves analysis. And there we commit to regular and rigorous analysis of practices and performances. This will be accomplished by fostering knowledgeable and well-informed Board of Education members who ask questions. And second, reviewing and discussing progress towards the objectives and tracking how we are doing it. So this is just a starting point. We wanted to share it with the community, and we will continue to update it as we go through. So I just wanted to kind of, I mean, everyone on the board has been involved, but I wanted to share it since it's being taped with the community. With that, I will turn over.
Tracy,
yes.
I'm sorry, before you go on, can I make one comment?
Yes.
Thanks. I just want to explain, everyone will see you got 2 sheets. One is the kind of vertical columns with transparency, accountability, analysis. The other is just like a landscape-oriented spreadsheet. That's just, I'm sharing that now. I'll share it electronically with everyone. But remember, I volunteered to kind of take on the task of trying to keep track of our progress towards the objectives and goals over time. And so this is my kind of draft proposal, if you will, for a tool that we can use to do that. I tried to lay it down in a way that hopefully it's easy to follow, from goal down to who's responsible for the objective, and then space for tasks and updates over time. What I'll ask for is feedback. If anyone thinks, does it make sense logically when you look at it? Does it not make sense? Confusing? Improvements? Whatever. Think of it as a pinata, pick up a club, take a whack at it, and let me know.
And Mike, do you want to provide a COVID update?
Yeah, I'll be brief. We still meet with Greene County Department of Health every Wednesday. Those meetings have gotten much shorter, which has been nice. We still get our superintendent meetings on Mondays and Thursday, update from Questar 3 in regards to numbers and what folks are doing. If you pay any attention to the news, there's been a slight uptick in cases. We're seeing the same thing here in Greenville. Seeing a few more cases popping up. But again, I think we're handling them nicely. We're moving through this process that we need to move through. And hopefully we will no longer, in the near future, be doing COVID updates. So.
Next discussion was student representative update.
Yeah, so this was something that was brought up for some discussion at our last meeting in regards to where the board wanted to move on putting together a resolution that would allow for student representation on the school board. There is state law that allows for this to take place. Part of that law indicates that it has to be voted on every 2 years by the general public. And that has to be part of the budget resolution, usually in that May vote, that it is put up there, just not who the person is, just the position of. And so that's got to be done 45 days prior to the vote. We missed that timeline, but it is something that if it is, we've brought it up at cabinet with our administrative team to take a look at moving forward with this as a potential possibility in the future. If the board decides to go out with a vote for a capital project in December, that may be a time there we want to put that resolution forward to allow for the school to go through its process through student council, through the high school to take a look at that process in nominating and choosing a high school student to represent the student body and to be sitting at the table with the board members. So what I just need to know from the board, is this something that we want to pursue, we want to move forward with, and if so, we can begin that process in working with the different advisors and the administration at the high school.
Jump in, Angela, you did all the homework.
I'm an obvious yes, so you all knew that, but I just wanted to say it again.
I'm also yes, and I'd like to appreciate the opportunity that we now have to maybe vote on it at the end of the year, but definitely if we can do what we need to be in a position to make the decision in time for that.
Yep.
As you said, thank you.
I'm a yes as well.
I'm interested. I'm not a yes yet. I'm think about it, and right now I'd like to stay focused in the budget for May and so forth, and we can certainly continue discussions through June and so forth.
Sure, and if you got any questions at any point, feel free to reach out, let me know what they are. We can try to get those things answered.
I think one of the questions that I had is a sense of other schools that are doing it, their learning, and then if there were any ahas.
Angela, have you done research on what other schools are doing? Or, I'm okay with this, probably yes, but I would like to see what our guidelines are going to be. You shared with us A district's guidelines, right? But we need to craft their own. I'm not putting that on you, but.
So like how they're doing what, how they're selecting the student, or what the actual responsibilities are?
Right, and characteristics, we talked about these characteristics of the child or student.
Yeah, so it has to be someone who's maintaining a specific academic achievement level, that whatever we decide, obviously, and there are different ways that they can be selected. It can be, we just decide as a board. It can be like they run and the students vote. It can be selected in a lot of different ways. The only thing is that they would always sit with us. They would come to every meeting. They just can't vote. They can't attend executive session. I don't know. I don't know much about it. I don't know if anyone local is doing it. Did you say your previous?
My previous district has had for 4 years now a student representative on the board, and it is run through the high school where it is chosen by the student council. Students nominate or submit an application based on academics, good standing, clean discipline record, and then voted on by their peers if a vote is needed. And then they meet monthly, at least monthly, with their building principal to discuss upcoming topics that they may present on what's going on at the school. Each year the representative is a little different. Some have been very active and engaged in surveying students on different topics that the board has talked about in previous meetings. Sometimes they just sit and listen and report back to their student council group on what the function of the board is and things like that. So it's really pretty wide open. Year to year it can change. I think what the board needs to really lock down on is what is that process we want to come up with. If, I shouldn't say that, if it's a go, then what we'd like to do is really lock down on that process and present to the board based on your feedback, what are we looking for? And then allow the schools to do that, the high school to do that and run through that process.
Yeah, I appreciate the discussion because it clarifies what we're actually saying now, right? We're just deciding we like the idea, we want to learn more, figure out what it actually would be to develop into something for the board actually to decide whether we're going to put out for community vote, right? So we're not now committing to necessarily do the thing, but just saying we're interested in doing the thing. Now let's learn what it is and how we want to do it.
Put some bones to it.
Yeah, thanks.
And then we have a couple of reminders. We have the Questar 3 annual meeting on April 13th. It is a virtual meeting at 6 p.m. We have the Questar business meeting on April 26th. That is at 5 p.m. in the district office. That's the very quick one. We have the annual budget vote and election. Nominating petitions are for board candidacy are due by 5 p.m. on April 18th. Okay, let's see, we have May 3rd, annual budget vote hearing, 7 p.m. in the, right now we're looking at the auditorium. May 4th, voter registration from 3 to 7 o'clock at the district office. And then May 17th, we have the annual vote and election from 1 to 9 p.m. in Ellis Cafeteria. So if you would please put all those on your calendar.
I should also mention that if depending on how many candidates we have, we will have a Meet the Candidates night, which will be on the night of the annual. Go ahead.
The night of the
Sorry. The annual budget hearing.
Okay.
We'll have Meet the
I
Candidates.
think the budget hearing starts at 6:30, not at 7.
You're right.
And I believe the Meet the Candidates is generally has been put on by the PTSA, so then you'll be contacting or at least working with them to coordinate all the details.
Yes.
Okay, and then you would communicate that information to all individuals who have submitted their petitions.
Correct.
Okay, all right, great. Any items for future discussion? Okay, then open forum, I'm going to say, please note, it is the same guidelines apply as stated during the first open forum. Is there anyone that would like to speak? All right, so with that, then I need a motion, turn the page, excuse me, be made to adjourn to executive session to discuss contract negotiations.
Eric and Jay.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.